Great God, calm my breathing and my mind and my heart, that I might be present in this moment, and my brothers and sisters and I could again feel the power of your word, your ancient story. Amen. Wow, thank you so much. This is, here's Rainer Rilke is one of my, he is my favorite poet from late 1800s, early 1900s. A deeply psychological, spiritual poet. And this was from our book we've just been finishing up, The Enlightened Heart. And because I am a little short attention spanned, I always like the short poems. Rose, O pure contradiction, joy of being no one's sleep under so many lids. It's such a typical thing to write up. This is, by the way, on Rilke's tombstone. It's his epitaph. Of the dozens, hundreds of poems he wrote, this is what he wants us to remember him by. The rose is such a standard thing to write a poem about, so romantic, so pristine and clear. But Rilke sees something doubled in that, something of a contradiction, a confusion, a tension. Roses are about, for him, waking us up, either because it's the beauty and the sleep, the rose on the tombstone, or because it's human love, or I'm sure there's a half dozen other things that Rainer would have thought of. I just want to point out that his poetry itself is about both beauty and uncovering. It's about two things all the time, to make us wake up, to get at something underneath. And just this last piece, the word lids is later in German. He's Austrian. And it refers to a lid, which could be an eyelid. The word also means petal, P-E-T-A-L, because it's about the rose petal. So he's talking about the rose and sleep and layers. But then more importantly, spelled with one letter different, it means poem or song. He's making a joke here at our expense. He's bringing things together to point out about the beauty of poetry, to help both wake us up, to calm us with beauty, to help us look more deeply. Ambiguity is the enemy of superficial minds. For us, it's a treasure trove. That's why I put it on his epitaph, so we'd read it and then think again. Peace, facts. All that matters is to be, and this is way easier. All that matters is to be at one with the living God. This is D.H. Lawrence. To be a creature in the house of the God of life, like a cat asleep on a chair, at peace, in peace, and at one with the master of the house, with the mistress, at home in the house of the living, sleeping on the hearth, yawning before the fire, sleeping on the hearth of the living world, yawning at home before the fire of life, feeling the presence of the living God, like a great reassurance, a deep calm in the heart, a presence as of the master sitting at the board in his own and greater being in the house of life. Easter comes to us this year, and this is Easter. This is one of my favorite weeks of the liturgical year. I love Easter because you can't beat the music and you can't beat the crowds until you get to a lot of your own people again, and it's still Easter stories. So Easter 2, for me, is probably second only to the reign of Christ, which is how I started in November 23. That is the final stamp of the liturgical year, bringing us back to the person of Jesus Christ. But Easter 2, we are between mystery. Last week, I was talking about resurrection, of course. What else can you talk about on Easter? And how it's dependent on us to practice it. How in our lives we have to actualize it, so that we can experience and others around us can experience. It's a little bit kind of Calvinist work heavy. You got to get in there and revision and deal with the extremely difficult politics around us, etc. That was about hard work. Today is as easy as a cat napping. Today is relaxing into resurrection. I love this story in Luke. This road to Emmaus gives us the best example, I think, of Jesus' humor. He comes up to these followers and says, "What are you talking about on the trail?" Like he doesn't know. And when they start talking, "Well, Jesus," and he says, "What's going on? Haven't you heard about the things that have happened in Jerusalem?" "What things?" Jesus says. That is just a funny line. The resurrected one hamming it up with the disciples. "Tell me again." And they don't recognize him. They don't recognize him. Another sermon about the nature of resurrection, what is familiar and what is discontinuous and not familiar about resurrection. He makes as if to go on further. "No, I can't. I'd love to stay. I got things I got to do." "No, please stay for dinner," they say. No. He says, This is the way that I say no to people on Thursday offering to buy me a beer." "Oh, no. Oh, no. I couldn't possibly." And so they talk Jesus into staying, and he goes in with them. And then, of course, this great image. He's been teaching them along the road, but now at dinner he teaches them again. By the way, I suppose one of the reasons I love this story is because I like thinking of myself as a rabbi on the trail, because it works better when we're not facing each other, when we're pointing the same direction and chatting. Tony Yard teasing me a couple weeks back about 20 hours in the car with Julie after being so absent for a year and a half. And how helpful that can be for conversation, or in his case, teasing me about silence, so I'll let you know. How to explain what life is about and what you've been up to. And then, of course, he breaks the bread, and they recognize him, and he disappears. It's a very strange resurrection account. We go in extremely short order from grief at loss to presence of a kind we've not known before to absence. And we go from pre-resurrection to resurrection to what is the nature of the risen Christ with us now that he disappeared suddenly. It's all right there within moments in Luke 24 in a way that it is different in other Gospels. This rabbi walking on the trail, teaching them, did they understand him or not? And it's in retrospect that they say, did not our hearts burn within us? We're such idiots. Darn it, he was right there. I get it now. I have read those stories, in their case, the Old Testament. I do know what he was talking about. I see it now. I didn't at the time. In retrospect, did not our hearts burn within us? Our 17 months is ended here. I'm sad this morning. I am sad. That hardest part of my morning, sitting there listening to Steve. This is cake. Thank you, brother. I'm excited because of what's next, because I'm so ready. Presence and absence, and then especially an absence that is a type of presence is where we are. And it's what interim ministry is all about. The interim has to deal, first off, as Steve mentioned, and some would say this is half of what an interim deals with, has to deal with an absence that remains a presence. Every conversation, every meeting, every beer, every sermon, every word spoken when you keep your hands on the pulpit has Mary Sue's presence that's an absence, has the grief that's ongoing and ongoing. And I know for some of you, that process happens quickly. Others say, no, it took me a year and a half, took me 2 years to say goodbye to my pastor, to stop grieving. That absence colors all interim work. That absence is an ongoing presence, as odd as that sounds. It's a remarkable piece of the interim calling. It's remarkable because it's resurrection talk as well. And then, in the present pastoring of these months that I engage in and love, at least I loved here, not quite so much my first gig, but that's a story you never had to hear. I'm going home today victorious. The presence of this pastoring is also proscribed, shortened, determinative, and so there's always an absence pushing in. Even as I'm here, aware that relationships don't get formed because you know I'm leaving. Super obvious in the last month or two, but forever in the 17 months. To be an interim pastor is to be aware of a coming absence, that even as much presence as you try to bring to it, it's limited. And everyone asks, when are you going? And then you have to discern how they ask that. Yeah. How much longer will you be here? And now I'm at the end of our time, and there's another presence, a not yet presence of Sam. It's just a weird job. That's all there is to it. It's a weird job which I have for the first time come to love at Chuck. Next for me, by the way, Brother Norm's coming up after lunch to help me pack up the apartment. We'll go down to Mount Angel, hang out in his backyard for the day. Then tomorrow I'm going to spend 3 days with some Trappist monks in Lafayette. There's a monastery there. Why am I doing that? It's hard for me to explain. I envisioned it months ago as a way of creating some neutral territory, a breathing space between you all and being back in Conifer with Julie. It's why I made Julie miss work. Norm offered to drive me home again. That's a lot of fun, being with my brother. I needed Julie to come here, and sorry she didn't get to meet you folks. That was just not in our plans. Been a very different year and a half for her as well. But I know I needed her help with the transition, with my own transition back into a previous life. This is my dad, Art Shrumm, as a 20-year-old or something on the upper left. This is him, Reign of Christ, Sunday, November 23, my first Sunday here. That's a nephew of mine, and my brother Norm sitting next to Dad. This was Dad's last time in worship in person anywhere. He went on hospice days after this, weeks after this. At 100, and I think, that's right, he was only 101 here, just before his 102nd birthday. This is me helping decorate the tree, Advent 23. This is me coming home from Cooper Mountain, where I had my last episode yesterday, walking around. It's a favorite view, and I'm coming back east from Cooper Mountain towards my apartment. This is at a hockey game with some of y'all. And this is a separate team that you helped form that I got to spend a little time with, the search committee on the lower right, just on the very front end, the first time we'd all been together. This is my college roommate who lives in Eugene that I got to see a couple times. This is my best friend from seminary, Jeff Sievert, who lives a mile from here. And we had lunch a dozen times. 15 times in the last year and a half. What a blessing that was. What a sense last week when we said goodbye, deciding not to be sad, but just let the gratitude take over us for giving us this chapter together. My office at my birthday, decorated. This is Halloween. If you can tell, that's me inside the Halloween costume with Allison. This is all y'all planting some trees and looking ahead. My car, because we don't get these, they call it conifer for a reason. We don't get this kind of leaf fall where I live. And this is a bunch of yahoos I kept running into accidentally on Thursdays. Staff retreat at the ocean. Amy got called away in emergency. This is a picture from the tram going down. Raise your hand if you've done the tram. It's worth doing. None of y'all told me how scary it was getting inside that thing. Putting up the screen here. And last spring, summer, fall, getting to spend time with my dad up in Bellevue, a couple of his last outings. He loved milkshakes, chocolate milkshake, no matter where we went. I had to go find him. Opportunities in the last year and a half of me being here to see him a dozen times. That would have been, had I been in Colorado, that would have been 4 times, 5 times. Had I taken an interim job I looked at in Washington, D.C., it would have been 2 times. A lot of time with my dad and brother and sister. This is Dad in November. This is his cat. That's Nefertiti, who kept on finding him in his very last days up in Bellevue. His absence, told my sister on the phone yesterday, I feel closer to my father than I did a year ago. Because the difficulty of him dying and the stress and the pain and the endless decisions have gone. And what's left are thousands of slides that I'm going through. And his day timer. It's okay with me if you feel conflicted about this. My sister said, "Really, you're reading his diaries?" My brother said, "Yeah, where are they?" You know. So you're in good company no matter where you fall. I have enjoyed, and there's only a handful of them, first from the 1950s, when he's considering leaving British Columbia Public Works, where he was an engineer, for a job in Renton, Washington, with Boeing. And he had a lot of difficulty with that decision. Fascinating to read that, as he was all of 30 at the time. And then also many decades went past. The next ones are in the 80s, when he was considering leaving Boeing after 28 years, so that he and Mom could go spend some time as volunteers in mission through the PCUSA. His struggle with leaving his supervisor, who he didn't like. My dad's a very gracious man, and say, it's not that I don't like him, I disagree with his leadership style. He explained that to himself. It's been wonderful feeling so close to him with all those pictures and reading his reflections. To feel his own doubt, his own struggle with life decisions that, of course, were so determinative for me. It gave me permission to wonder, what the hell was I thinking coming to Beaverton? What am I doing going back? What if I can't find a gig in Denver? I'm just starting to look for another interim gig in Denver. I'll let you know. It gave me permission to be struggling like my father struggled with life and faith. It reminded me of this quote. There was nothing at all scandalous in his journals, but struggle. And it's this, Terence is his name from centuries ago. I'm a human being, so nothing human is strange to me. I think of that all the time. I think of vocation and trying to be present. My brother at Dad's service a couple months back talked about Dad's depression. He struggled with depression on and off. And what I get in his diaries is also he struggled with God. There's so much I need to rely on God more. I want to follow Christ and Him alone. I don't want to worry about finances and my ego. I'm the problem. I want to be more faithful. And what Norm said, and he's quoting someone else, to want to be faithful is to be faithful. Fascinating. It's so reassuring. To merely want to be faithful is to be faithful. Friends, I'm so grateful for these past handful of seasons, for the ways that you've trained me in presence, being with me in absence. I think I mentioned before, some describe interim ministry as attachment theory ministry. That what the Committee on Ministry will ask, and I ask of churches in Denver, and they would ask here, how did it go with the guy from Colorado? They're not asking about me. They're asking, did the church attach? Some churches who feel too hurt or abandoned or grief interrupts too much. And the reason you have an interim pastor is because if you don't, there's a chance the next pastor inheriting all that grief, all that problem, all the absence, one being what we call in the biz an unintentional interim. That's why the last 17 months, the conventional wisdom is between your called pastors, you need to do something else. It goes both ways that I learned to attach to you as well. And I'm so grateful for that. Being with you has been as easy as being a cat in the master's house. This is who I get to see this next week. This is Todd, who I miss. This is Todd on Julie's lap. Julie finds out I'm showing pictures of her legs. We're all in trouble. In this scenario, it's not clear to me, especially at my own house, who is the master, who's the mistress, who's the cat. We seem to shift roles. But that's how easy being with you has been. So relaxed, so comforting. I'm just grateful today. I'm grateful, just grateful. I guess I'm, Jen and I were talking about, because being grateful is better than being angry, which is a cover-up for the hardest thing of all, being sad. So I'm grateful to get to spend this time with you so that I can say, did not my heart burn within me as we walked? While we opened up the scriptures and our tradition, while we broke bread and did funerals and fellowship and pastor pints and meetings and Zooms. Thank you, Cedar Hills, for walking with me, for opening me up so much.